The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, we're talking all things MarTech with the Godfather himself. That's right, folks, Scott Brinker's in the house. And on marketing news, you might have missed why fact-checking might be the latest frontier in the AI takeover. All that next on Scope. Oh my goodness gracious, this is On Scope, the marketing podcast, brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading streaming audio platform. You can get all your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment on the Odyssey app. I am your host, Mike Berberich, and with me, as always, producer of On Scope, Ryan Dinger. Ryan, are you feeling refreshed? Are you feeling rejuvenated on this day?
You know, in fact, I am. It was a week off for the entire On Scope team, but me personally, I took a little PTO. I was away from the office, and I am feeling rejuvenated. But now we're back here, and I'm excited about today's episode, I gotta tell you.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Talk about, taking a week off and then coming back with a bang.
Mm-hmm.
It is Scott Brinker Day.
Yes.
Okay. But you know what? You know me, easily excitable.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait for it. But first, we have some business to tend to, Ryan.
That's
Am
right.
I right?
That's right, Mike. It's time for news you might have missed. This week, we have a story from Adweek. Here's the headline for you. AI chatbots can now write community notes on X. And for those of you who have been living under a rock, X is what was formerly called Twitter, now X. X is piloting a new program that lets AI systems engage in the fact-checking process. Here's the start of the story. X will let AI chatbots generate their own community notes, which are user-submitted comments attached to some posts that offer additional context. The pilot program began on Tuesday, July 1st. X hopes this will help community notes scale, Keith Coleman, X's VP of Product and Head of Community Notes, told Adweek. X has not established specific targets for growing the new AI-generated community notes program. Quote, our focus has always been on increasing the number of notes getting out there, he said, and we think that AI could be potentially a good way to do this. Humans don't want to check every single post on X. They tend to check the high visibility stuff, but machines could potentially write notes on far more content. Users can build their own AI note writers using LLMs like X's proprietary Grok or another system like OpenAI's ChatGPT and connect them to X using an API. For X, public access is a critical principle. Coleman said, we want all of humanity to be able to participate, and we want people to develop the best possible technology to solve this problem, whatever that is. Notes submitted by AI systems will need to adhere to the same rules as human-written notes. They will undergo ratings by human users to help validate their accuracy, and in order to be displayed to all users, they will need to be found, quote, helpful by users with historically differing perspectives. AI-generated community notes will also be subject to X's scoring mechanisms, which attempt to mitigate inaccuracies and misinformation. Mike, the AI takeover has entered a new frontier, fact-checking. What do you think?
Okay, let me start by saying I really love the concept of community notes to begin with. When X rolled that out, I thought that was a really innovative, really value-driving initiative. I really like that. I am heartened to hear that they are right from the get-go putting human barriers in place on all of this. My concern is one of the great promises of AI is scale. There's going to be a whole lot of note adding when AI is just kind of unleashed on this. And my first question is, what is this AI trained on? I do like that people can independently create a bot, attach it with an API, and have that out in the world. But I think that before even a note gets generated, I think there need to be some guardrails upstream, because if you're feeding your bot that is now going to fact check other statements on the internet,
Yes.
it's consensus driven.
Yeah.
Most people think a cow started the Chicago fire. Like, if you're
Is that
just
true? I never heard
going,
that before.
yeah, there was a
I guess
whole
it's
thing.
not true,
Yes,
actually.
there's a whole thing that a cow kicked over a gaslight, and
Huh.
because Chicago was built on wood, that the entire city went up.
Yeah.
It absolutely did not happen like that.
Yeah.
But it's been repeated enough times, and it's not like such a high stakes story that I think if you went for a consensus driven answer, you'd get the wrong one. So that's kind of like fact's a thing. You know what I mean?
It's not a moving target like
Precisely.
some in society would have us think.
Precisely.
You know? Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, where is the objective kind of benchmark of fact that all of these robots are going to be learning?
Yeah, I sort of agree. And I think it's bigger than X, right? Like X is maybe the first one doing this, but all these social media platforms, you can see dealing with misinformation and disinformation that they may go down this path
100%.
and leverage AI bots to fact check, so to speak. But I'm reminded of the dead internet theory, which I know you're familiar with.
Sir.
You know, and if you're not familiar with the dead internet theory, and I may get some of the details wrong here, but it's basically that the majority of internet traffic that exists today is bot driven or AI created, not human, i.e. synthetic, and that problem, as AI proliferates, is only going to become more pronounced. And you know, it makes me wonder if you have bots on AI on X who are putting out information, and they're training the fact checker bots on this information that may not be real. Like you said, like what's the logical endpoint of all this? It's the Ouroboros of an AI bot eating other AI bots and training on misinformation, and then that becoming established as fact.
Yeah, Brian, you're on a very good kind of lane of thinking right here, because academia actually has a term for this. It's called model collapse. You want to guess whether that's a good or a bad thing?
It sounds bad
Most
to
collapses
me.
are
Yes.
Most collapses
Yes.
are bad. And
the
this
collapse
is
of the Berlin Wall, not so bad.
not
But
so bad.
otherwise, yes.
The exception that proves the rule. But this particular collapse, not very good. And it's the idea that you just laid out, is that when the majority of content being generated is being generated by AI, and therefore the majority of content training AI was generated from AI, you become untethered from the real world.
Yeah.
Their facts are very hard to pin down in that world, and you get to an almost robotic existential crisis where nothing means anything.
Yeah, and I also wonder about the human reviewers, right? Like, you know, we know that social media platforms at large have this issue with bot traffic, and it doesn't seem like there's a way. I mean, you can review accounts to determine the likelihood that one is a bot and one isn't, but as these become more sophisticated, I think it's not unrealistic to think that humans could start creating bots that appear to be human on social media, and you could also create bots to rank and score community notes as if they were a human. Or even if that's too far-fetched for you, you could just have human reviewers who are acting in bad faith. They want something to be true, so they're marking the incorrect fact check as true because it, you know, substantiates whatever they want or whatever they believe. So I don't know that relying on humans to score these things is the answer either.
No, it's not a failsafe. And to your earlier point, that is one of the things, that's one of the first things bots do, is develop ways to trick you into thinking they're not bots. I'm sure everybody listening to this has had some sort of experience with CAPTCHA, the company that kind of, validates that you are a human being and can continue with this transaction. The reason you've seen those change so many times over the years, and sometimes you're like, this is too hard for a human to get, is because they're responding to the bots learning and getting through those hurdles. So that it won't happen here, that's kind of a naive thing to believe.
And, you know, you may be listening to this conversation and thinking, okay, so like, what does this have to do with marketers? This is a media issue, which media obviously plays a big part in marketing anyway.
Yeah, but your point is well taken.
There is actually a larger issue here. There's a brand safety issue. If you're a brand, I'm not going to use any particular one. Let's say you're a candy bar brand.
Yep.
And a bot puts out information that your product causes cancer. And then that is used to train an AI fact checker, now suddenly you can sort of see the pathway to where something that is completely unsubstantiated, untrue of your brand is now being seen as fact simply because of this dynamic, this environment that is being created. So, you know, AI, I think we have a healthy skepticism of some of its, but we also think that there are a lot of useful applications for it. I'm not sure that turning over fact checking entirely to bots, and that's not what X is doing. To be fair, they are making it clear human reviewers will still be part of the equation, but bots are certainly taking on a bigger role, and that's pretty scary. I think, just from a brand safety perspective, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary world out there when it comes to technology. It's proliferating at a rate that we have never seen, and it'll never be this slow again.
Yeah.
And so anybody out there who, in general, is kind of stressed about the tech landscape, Superman has arrived.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
No, wait. It's Scott Brinker.
Scott Brinker. Unbelievable. I mean, how did we find this story to talk about? It's like these things are almost planned and strategized.
The universe works in mysterious ways, my friend. You just have to travel the path.
Unbelievable.
And our path today leads us to the man who at age gave the nickname the Godfather of MarTech.
Wow, is that right? They actually called him the Godfather of MarTech?
Godfather of MarTech.
We're early on in the run here of shows, but I think that has to be the coolest nickname we've heard for a guest so far. What is the Godfather of MarTech? You're pretty good at impressions, Mike. What does the Godfather of MarTech sound like to you?
I'm going to make him an A/B test they can't refuse.
Very good. Very good. But yes, the Godfather of MarTech, Scott Brinker, is here to help us.
I'm done. I'm out.
To help us make sense of it all. Go on.
Yes, he is. As VP of Platform Ecosystems at Hubspot, he shapes the company's platform strategy and leads business programs for its global technology partner ecosystem. He is also, as a lot of you know, the editor of chiefmartec.com, where he analyzes topics at the intersection of marketing, technology, and management. He joins us today with the itty-bitty task of making sense of the MarTech landscape. My chat with Scott Brinker is up next. Everyone, this is a big day in OnScope history. We have Mr. MarTech himself. We've got Scott Brinker, who VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot and editor of Chief MarTech. Scott, thank you so much for coming through and spending some time with me this morning.
Wow, well, thank you for that incredibly enthusiastic welcome.
It's Scott Brinker Day. How can I not be excited?
Oh man, I didn't even know there was a Scott Brinker Day.
Well,
boy, we've lowered the bar on what we'll call it. Okay.
So, sadly, I couldn't get it off, but we'll try again next year.
Petition.
Yes. So, you are very well known for kind of getting a jump on trying to make sense of this crowded and chaotic MarTech space. So I want to know from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges in really explaining this space in clear, simple terms?
Wow. Well, I think if I'm known for anything, it's basically confusing the heck out of people. Crazy slide. The micro dots.
We need it.
Little logos. No, I mean, this has been, 15-year evolution of something that, frankly, none of us could have predicted. I certainly couldn't have. I think the challenge that so many people have with MarTech is, boy, it's this dichotomy. On one hand, you've got just this amazing amount of innovation, like the pace of new things that come to the market, the imagination of what's available to marketers. I mean, I would argue it's the golden age of marketing in many ways, but it's too much, right?
Yes.
It's just people get overwhelmed. There's so many things. It's constantly changing, and unfortunately, the pace of change seems to be only accelerating, if not hyper accelerating.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
It
feels like
better
it.
be. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that, because the source of acceleration was kind of pointed to in your latest MarTech report. I don't think it's surprising that AI has accelerated the kind of the expansion of the MarTech landscape. But the degree to which it has accelerated was certainly attention-grabbing, let's say that. So, what does this necessitate in kind of the short to midterm? Obviously, AI is not going anywhere. It's going to kind of, I see its journey kind of like digital, where at one point it's just going to be air. Talking about digital marketing today is kind of silly. It's just like marketing in today. But in the mid-range, what is the best treatment for this? Is it a chief AI officer? Is it like an AI department? Or are those just the same mistakes that I'm kind of remembering from when digital and programmatic blew up?
Well, I think you're right to make the parallel to essentially the internet, right? The explosion of what we now call digital marketing. I think the difference is the time scale on which it's happening. I mean, one of the reasons I think we even had the opportunity to have these chief digital officer roles that, they fell out of fashion, but actually you could argue they served a purpose at that particular time.
Yeah.
Particularly over, in the early 2000s, there's a good 10-year period where in many ways having someone who is really driving as the change agent, in particular for the marketing department, in particular for, any of these new digital customer touch points, it made sense. It was a way to help companies do this transition.
Yeah.
But to even have an executive to have that sort of role and to be able to plan out a way of making that transformation, you have to have some runway, which we kind of had, but now with AI, it's like it is changing so fast. I don't think you can imbue the responsibility for this in a single individual. This is something that has every single executive in a company has to be in on how are we transforming the way we work, the way we engage with customers, with what this makes possible.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And actually, it didn't. Now I'm remembering that whole ChatGPT to 1 million users in like 35 days. I forget what it was. It was 14, something ridiculous. But you're right. That time scale, there was time to sit with digital where it was just bad display ads and GeoCity websites. And then it kind of kept those things. So having somebody with the exclusive responsibility to shepherd that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, this feels like flash paper.
I love that metaphor. That, yes, yeah, that's very accurate.
So maybe the chief AI officer isn't quite the necessity that a chief digital officer, the value add. But there is typically somebody beside the CTO that's got an impetus to drive tech innovation and adoption and integration in an organization. Speaking of conversations that we've been having for decades, but now have a different kind of shade to them, where is the responsibilities from the CIO and the CTO to whomever it is being tasked, if that's a different person, and I think in a lot of ways, or a lot of organizations it is, tasked to like, okay, we need AI. We need to AI fuel, especially our marketing. How does that relationship look?
Ooh, yes, the relationship of the ages. Again, I think it has to be a full partnership. We can talk about in the context of the CIO and the CMO, that's the small domain in which, I maybe have some experience, but it isn't just marketing, right? I mean, everything of customer service, the way we're running sales organizations, the way we're running our product development teams, all of these things are changing with AI. Now, I think there are some fundamentals that people can invest in that are incredibly valuable and also pretty clear what needs to be done. And more than anything, it's at the data layer. And this is where I think the CIO in particular can really lead the charge in putting in place, the cloud data warehouse, cloud data lakehouses. And it's not just enough to throw all the data in one place. You need systems of how you manage and govern around that. I think it's a phenomenal thing for the CIO to lead because it's really empowering, not just marketing to use that infrastructure or customer service to use that infrastructure, but by having that infrastructure connected across the entire organization, now marketing has insights directly from customer service. We can actually use these things as new marketing channels, new touch points. So I think there's no lack of things for the CIO to do. We haven't even pulled the lid back on all the security challenges and compliance challenges. Believe me, the CIO, the chief security officer, they've got their hands full. I think the CMO really needs to take the responsibility for two things. First of all, how does this change customer experience? How is this changing the way that customers find us, right? I mean, we're in the process of watching classic search engine optimization on Google go through a massive disruption. So what are these new ways in which customers find us and engage? How do we adapt? But I also think there's a huge opportunity for marketers to to change the way they actually run marketing internally. I mean, so many of these things, I would argue, I'd put marketing in 3 buckets. They thoroughly offend most marketers.
Let's go.
So,
That's what we're here
like
to
this,
do.
please. All right. Have them picketing
Let's
outside
have them spit out some
Okay,
coffee.
sounds
Yes.
good. If I oversimplify, I'd put marketing in 3 buckets.
Mm-hmm.
There's been creative and strategy.
Yep.
Which is what everyone thinks marketing is.
Precisely. The tip of the iceberg above the ocean.
But we don't spend a lot of time in like total number of calories on that.
Yeah.
Most of the resourcing is gone in the second bucket I'll call production and analysis.
Yep.
Because the work of actually producing and analyzing and managing things is just incredibly labor intensive. There's been a third bucket also of marketing ops, marketing tech that supports this. Again, same thing as creative and strategy. In many ways, not very well resourced in the grand scheme of things. You know, I think what's exciting about AI is it is really dramatically reducing what we need to invest in on the production and analysis side to produce equal or greater outcomes. Now, there's a couple ways you can deal with this. One is you could just pocket that efficiency and say, great, we got rid of half the marketing department. We're all good. I think that'd be a huge mistake.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Because this is a technology that is essentially everyone's going to get.
Yep.
So it is a commoditization. And if all you do is say like, oh yeah, we're reducing our costs, well, guess what? All of your competitors are reducing their costs in the same ways too. The only way you turn this to a competitive advantage is you reinvest that resourcing and that capability and like, oh wow, there are things we can do with strategy and creative, like, you know, the scale of experimentation, the speed of experimentation, what we can imagine, you know, lean into that frontier. I think it's going to be the golden age for strategy and creative. I also think it's going to be a great opportunity for marketing ops and marketing tech because, again, to truly empower those creative and strategy teams, the investment we're making in this infrastructure and capabilities has to be rock solid. It has to really be structured the right way.
1,000,000,000%. Yeah, you need this. It's like, no, this is the goods. We've run it through. Like the back end is giving you an insight based on absolutely non-debatable data. Use your curiosity and your imagination to make this something that's going to put us ahead of our competition. I really love, and we've touched on it a couple of times in the past, but data is the wheelhouse for the CIO and the CTO to really kind of stake their claim in the modern space of like, I've kind of set this up because it's really it's the primary space where marketing doesn't get to do their own thing. You do not want marketing with a different configuration of data or a different truth than the rest of your organization. Brand is everything you do. You know, so if operations has this data and marketing has this data, that is a absolute nightmare for when messaging meets the actual brand in real life. So I love that as a start.
It's been the Tower of Babel. You know, it's like all these silos, and they sort of speak the same language, but not quite.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. It's in those cracks where things don't align up quite right that either we're missing expectations with customers or frankly we're just missing opportunities to connect the dots and see the insight of what's actually happening.
Very, very well said. Everyone, stick around because when we come back, tech expansion in this economy, we're getting the CFO in on the act, so stick around. Right, guy?
Yeah.
I can tell when you're stressed.
I am stressed.
What are you stressed about, buddy?
You know, I've been looking over the data for the show, and there's a lot of great insights. Well, not insights, a lot of data points, really. But I'm having trouble figuring out how to turn those into insights that create measurable results. Yeah, I'm kind of lost.
Yeah. How do I put this? First of all, I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks. Second of all, I've seen your spreadsheets, bro. You need to stop. Get help.
Oh.
And I know exactly where you can get that help.
Oh, great. You turned it around.
Yeah,
I was nervous there.
absolutely.
I was about to walk out.
No. I'm about to invite you to join the 2025 A&A Masters of Data Conference, running August 11th through the 13th in San Diego or virtually, and turn your data strategy into those measurable results that you're looking for.
San Diego.
I mean,
beautiful city.
Come on.
August.
Come on.
Great time of year.
Let's go.
I love San Diego. I actually call it the city that always sleeps.
Oh, I like
And
that.
I like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I say it as a term of endearment. It feels sort of insulting since I'm in New York that I'm kind of like saying the opposite, but I actually enjoy it. It's a
It's
nice getaway
all love.
from the hoopla of, the hoopla.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's the kind of the separation you need, the focus you need to really get into mastering your data. It is the fuel for everything, and it should be working for you. It should not be stressing you out.
Yeah, so if you want to learn how brands are using AI, clean rooms, and first data to personalize smarter, protect privacy, and drive real growth, San Diego in August is the place you got to be.
Absolutely. I know you guys want more details about it, and you're in luck because I've got the URL right here.
Lay it on them.
That's ana.net/dataconf25.
That's right, Mike. ana.net/DATACONF25.
And now, back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. My guest, Scott Brinker, VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot and Editor-in-Chief of Chief MarTech. So we have been kind of unpacking a very tangled, very complex landscape, but I really want to get down to brass tacks of all of this costs money. And especially nowadays, we've got a bit of an uncertain market. We want to kind of cut down those L's on the P&L sheet. So, CFOs are, in many organizations cracking down on MarTech investments, especially those organizations that may not have been able to make sense of it or communicate its value to this point. In light of this, how should marketers approach assessing what's needed in their tech stack? Can you work with the CFO to get this more tightened and efficient without losing the value that it gives to the marketing function?
Yeah, well, this is a fun topic, of course. After we resolved the relationship between the CMO and the CIO, we decided let's talk about the CMO-CFO relationship.
Nothing more
because that's certainly less contentious,
exactly.
right?
We love talking about bills here at On.
So I think one of the things I would say is there's some of these companies called SaaS management platforms. The one I'm thinking of at the moment is called Xylo. And so this is kind of meta. It's software to help you manage all of the software you have.
We've arrived.
Sums it up, right?
It's like an event horizon right there.
And so it's great because they plug into these stacks, not just marketing, but the tech stack overall.
Okay.
And they're able to track like all the different subscriptions you have and their usage and whatnot, how much they cost and so on. Now, one of the things I love about these companies is because they manage literally hundreds or thousands of tech stacks for companies, every year they generally publish an aggregation of data of like, okay, well, what's happening with tech stacks? Are they shrinking? Are they growing? What is average spend? And you saw like back in the 2021, like, oh my God, it might be a pandemic, but everything's digital, huge growth in spend, explosion of the tech stack. Followed by pretty much 2022 and 2023, hatchet away as much of it as you could.
Yep.
It was interesting that even in all that hatcheting, overall the tech stacks only shrunk by about 10%. For really people thinking of like, what can we cut? When they really got down to it, there wasn't as much as I think, there wasn't as much waste as I think people were under the impression there was, because these are truly digital operations right now. They're complex. They have a lot of moving parts. Not to say there isn't room for optimization and rationalization, but it's not like, Wanamaker's tech stack, 50% of this is worthless. I just don't know which 50%.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing, is in the past year, it actually grew, both the amount of money people were spending and the amount of tech tools they have.
Interesting.
A tremendous amount, on average around 5% or so.
Still, a couple of years ago it was down by 10. That is a...
Exactly. It's not like the economy, was any better. CFOs were still being incredibly, demanding about, okay, is this investment actually going to justify itself? I mean, one guess as to, what has been the thing over the past year that people might have decided they needed to put more investment in.
Anybody's guess.
And so this is the challenge. It's always been the case with MarTech, and we're definitely entering another period of it, is it's not that any of this stuff is guaranteed. I really do wish there was something you could put a coin in and be guaranteed everything goes up and to the right.
Right.
But we do know the world is changing. We do know that we are in competition with other companies that are trying to figure out new and better ways to go to market, to engage their customers. We have to invest in these technologies and learn what's possible, even under the expectation that we're going to learn some of this, some of it isn't going to work, we're going to have to get rid of it, but some of it is going to work. Some of it is going to change the baseline that we now have. And I think this is why one of the things I'm an advocate for is designing MarTech for change. You know, and this is the technical architecture. You have to make sure you've got open platforms. You have to have open access to your data. You need APIs. That's also in the way in which contracts are negotiated with companies. You should not be locked into these multi-year contracts with providers. Yeah. You know, you have to accept that, listen, I've got a set of capabilities I know I need today. Good thing about having all these MarTech vendors is there's a lot of competition. It is actually a buyer's market, you know, so lean into that, you know, about what you want. But you also have to accept the reality that you're going to need to switch something out. You're going to need to get something new. You're going to want to get rid of something old. And the worst part is you don't know exactly what it's going to be. But you know there will be those things over the next year or two. And you really have to plan, you know, both from a business perspective and from a technical perspective for that to be the reality. And I think that's actually something the CMO can do in partnership with the CFO. Because talk about optionality and, you know, the CFO's eyes light up. Yes, tell me about optionality on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why composability has become such a big part of the discussion because, listen, you know, the tech giants became the tech giants because they're good at what they do. But having a one-size-fits-all solution, I think we're going to wholeheartedly agree on this, is that the technology should never dictate the creative.
Oh, totally.
The creative needs to find what it needs from the technology. And I think that what you're saying is this is a good way to go into the future. But I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say one more thing from a financial perspective that should be very encouraging to the CMO and the CFO, is you're starting to see the shift in pricing models with this technology, where it used to be like, okay, it's just seat licensing. So I have to buy a seat for everyone, whether they use it for 5 minutes a year or, you know, like 52 weeks a year. It's the same seat license. This is one of the reasons why you've seen stats over the years of like the utilization of MarTech just dropping. Is because, okay, I bought all these capabilities, but I'm only really using this part, but I have to pay for all of it. You're seeing this shift start to happen to pricing models that are actually more based on usage, consumption, in some cases even outcomes. Like we're seeing this in customer service right now. You can buy products that like you pay based on the number of customer service tickets it successfully resolves. Okay, what's a customer success ticket resolution worth to me? What's the utilization rate of that? Guess what? It's 100% because I'm only paying for the things that actually successfully does. You know, now this transition isn't going to happen overnight, but I think it's something that's leaning in a direction where marketers and their partners in finance are going to be in a position to say like, yeah, actually we can start to align this directly to what is truly driving revenue or reducing expenses for the company.
That makes a ton of sense. Especially, and I'm not saying, listen, computation powers, data centers, all of that stuff, but these are digital products. So it's not like a physical product, like if I price this below this, my margin's gone, I am now losing money. I think there's a little more flexibility when it's a digital product to make these pricing models that kind of fit in, because I want customers at the end of the day. Like, I don't want to stick somebody with something they're unhappy with because it got me $100 more. I'd rather this person say this is a steal of a lifetime and still works for my margin. So I like that. I think that that's kind of an optimistic future that we're heading into, that we might have a win-win-win situation on our hands, dare I say it.
It aligns the interests of the vendor and the buyer. You know, and the vendor's on the hook. Like, okay, well, basically, if our software is valuable, if it gets used, or if it delivers the outcomes, great. You know, and I want to invest in like, how do I have more successful outcomes for my customers? Because that's ultimately how I get paid. That makes the customer happy, right? That's where they want the investment to be. So that alignment, I think, again, this won't happen all at once, but I think directionally, that is a tremendous innovation in the business model alignment between marketing and MarTech vendors.
Yeah, and one that I don't think gets brought up enough. I think that we're just like, okay, I can do more things. There's more things I need to take care of, but like, they are like flat screen TVs. Like, at a certain point, the technology gets there to where like, you can't price it at this. I know that this is like, your margins are down here, and so the entire market responds. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So I know that we were just talking a lot about the financial aspects of this, but I would like to talk about something, whether it's mindset, approach, strategy, staffing, organization. What is one insight that you'd like to impart on our listeners regarding your current tech stack management, regardless of what their company size or budget is, what is there one thing that you think everybody, every marketer, every organization out there can benefit from?
All right. Well, I will put a doubling down for a moment on the design for change. And
Oh,
I mean
yes.
that at every level.
Yes,
Because
I
that is going to
absolutely
be
love
the
that.
competitive differentiation between companies is who can adapt fastest. Oh my goodness, it's Darwin. We've come back to basically like, yes, it's survival of,
Yeah.
those who adapt fastest and best. If I was going to say something else though, I would say I was thinking about your comment at the beginning here about like a chief AI officer. The companies that are going to win aren't going to have a chief AI officer. They're going to have almost every person in the company basically treat their job as if they were the chief AI officer. I mean, the companies who are really moving forward with this are empowering their individual contributors to really be able to lean into this technology because it is, oh my goodness, as an IC, like what you can do with this technology even today.
Yeah.
Like it is astounding. And the technology as it exists today, it's the worst it's ever going to be, right?
Yes,
People keep
well
making
said.
that remark. It is very insightful on that because 6 months from now, it's going to be even better. A year from now, it's almost going to be incomprehensibly better. But, this is really where if you're going to empower the ICs to be able to lean into this technology and learn and share with each other, I think you're going to be able to capture some of that acceleration of what makes possible. If you're too much in I don't know, but skeptical, there'll be an AI department, and the chief AI officer will have to approve every use case. You're never going to keep up with the pace at which this thing is moving.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that. And I think that we've seen it, at least from my perspective. Gen AI starts with individuals' curiosity and they figure out a productivity hack and they show it to their coworker and it kind of sets off like that. But right now is the time, especially in that space, to experiment. Low stakes experimentation. You should have curious people knowing that they don't have to hit publish ever on anything that they work with Gen AI to create. But the more you use it, the more you understand it. I like to say that people who are still afraid that Gen AI is going to take their job have never used Gen AI.
In which case, it actually will take their job.
Yeah, yes.
Because if you aren't able to like adeptly use these technologies and like harness, both the creative benefits but also like the productivity benefits of this, you are just not going to be as valuable as any of your like peers who are like, oh yeah, no, I can leverage this. I can 10x what I can do. And it's not about just volume. It's not just about speed. It's 10x possibility.
Yes.
And that's the people I think. This is why I say I actually think it is going to be a golden age for marketing. Because, marketers, I always felt like the superpower is their imagination. I mean, just constantly, like a font of incredible ideas. The vast majority, they don't even like speak out loud. They throw it out like, yeah, that's not possible. I'm not going to get budget for that. That's going to take too long. And we're getting into a place where more and more of those ideas are actually achievable.
Yeah.
And so people who really love that and thrive on that, they're going to have a blast.
That's kind of fantastically amazing. And you reminded me of something I used to say a lot of, like, show me a marketer on earth that doesn't have 5 things that they've been dying to do or figure out or explore for the past 3 years. Wouldn't it be lovely to give every marketer out there some time back to go into those things, those dreams, I would love to, ideally. Wouldn't a little more ideally in your marketing organization be lovely, guys? So, Scott, I think I'm going to leave it there. Unless you have any parting words for our listeners, this has been just an absolutely fantastic discussion. I appreciate you being a guest here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it as well.
Here we are again, my friends, at the end of another episode of On Scope, the Marketing Podcast. This was a historical day for the show. I want to thank my guest, Scott Brinker, for coming on and lending some clarity and, dare I say, sense to the crazy world of marketing technology. As a reminder, if you have an idea for a future topic or guest, we would love to hear from you. That email? onscope@ana.net. And, as always, here is your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, And consider the following from marketer Sean Garrity. The technology you use impresses no one. The experience you create with it is everything. Think on that, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of ANA Studios.